I'm just going to quickly show you how to connect your SQL Server database and tables to Access. And that would allow Access to serve as like the front end interface for your SQL tables. So I'm going to go ahead and do a blank database. I'm going to call it, my example is Sugar Bakers, and I'm just going to call this front end. And I'm going to change the location. I actually have a final project folder I'm going to put it in. And I'm going to go ahead and create it. Now, at this point, there's no connection, so I do need to connect this to my SQL Server database and tables. So if I go into external data, I can click on New Data Source, and I want to grab the data from a database. And I'm going to choose SQL Server here. And I don't want to import the data, I actually want to link it, so that if I make changes in this interface, it will actually update the SQL Server tables. So if you've not done this before, you're probably going to have to create a DSN name. So you just click on New. We'll come down here, and we're going to choose SQL Server Native Client. We need a name that we can reference this connection that it's making. We need a name that we can reference it by. And so I'm going to call it Sugar Bakers. And I'm going to put this in my final project folder. Actually, I'll save it under the name I did before, Sugar Bakers Front End Connection. That looks good. And we'll click on Next. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Finish. And how do I want to describe the data source? Let's see, SQL is the back end. Source. Which SQL server do you want to connect to? Click on the arrow here. This is my connection when I log in to SQL Server, because that is my home computer. So that is what I'm going to pick. And I am using Windows authentication, so I'm going to keep it. And basically for all of these, I'm just going to keep the defaults. And I'm just going to click OK. And I'm going to click OK again. And here it is showing all of the things I can connect to, but it looks like it defaulted to the master database. So that is an issue. So I'm going to cancel and I'm going to do this again. This very well could happen to you. Does not hurt to go through this again. So I don't want to connect to the master database. So let's do this again. And I'm going to call this Sugar Bakers Database Connection. And that's what I'm going to save it as. And I'm going to click on Finish. How do you want to describe the data source? Connecting to backend data. What server do I want to connect using or connect to? This is going to be my login. Oh, try that again. Come on. keeping Windows authentication. The default database. This is where we need to change. So we do not want the master database. We want our database. Okay, so you will pick your database, whatever you called it at this point, and then the rest can stay on the defaults. And now when it shows the list of tables, these are my tables that I created for sugar bakers. Now I would not select all because then you're going to get all of this extra stuff. I would only select your tables here. And I'm just pressing Control and I'm clicking. And then I'm going to click OK. And what it's done is it has created a link to these tables. And if I double click, I can see the data that I inserted. And I can actually insert new records in here and it will update my SQL database tables. Now this little extra one here is just a default table that Access creates. So I'm going to click on this tab, close that, because we don't need it. We're just going to be using the tables that we created. Okay, so if I double click, you can see I don't have quite all of my data entered yet. Actually, the system diagram I don't need in here, so I'm going to remove it. Oops, let me close it first. Okay, I only really want my tables in here. And once you've got it in here, you can create relationships in Access. If you're going to start using this as your front end, you definitely need to do that. So to create a relationship, you're going to go into Database Tools and Relationships. You're going to add all of your tables to the window. Now the relationships exist in SQL Server, but when you bring your tables in like this, they don't recreate them. So you have to manually recreate them. So let me organize these a little because it'll just be easier. And I'll start with the zip code and the customer. So we know from SQL Server that the zip code is my primary table. I'm just going to left drag the zip code field from the zip code table. I'm going to land it right on top of the zip code field in customers. And I'm going to click create. Now, normally in Access, you can turn on these rules, but because we're dealing with linked data, they're kind of faded and we can't select them. But it will do the join line for us. And let's see. We have products, items on order. Payments is also connected to our customer. So customer can make many payments. We're going to take customer ID, drag it down to customer ID there, create a join. And then we're also going to join the customer to the orders. Take the customer ID, pop it over here, and create the join. And then we can have multiple items on an order. So we're going to drag order ID over to the order ID in items on order. And then we are going to take the item number and connect that to products. But the primary table here is products. So we're going to take the item number from products to items on order and create that join. And I think at this time we have the joins correct. I believe they are. So let's save this and close it. Okay, so at this point, I can just double click on any of these and start entering data. If I prefer to use a form, I can do that. I just need to select whatever table, go to create, and then I can specify form. And the neat thing here, especially for something like orders and items on order, is I can select orders. I can go into a form wizard. I can move everything over. And then I can actually grab the items on the order and put those over as well. I think I do have one thing, duplicated order numbers, so we'll kind of move that back. And then we'll go to next. And you can see that if I do this, I've got my order information at the top and I've got my item information at the bottom, which is kind of nice. Okay. And you can display it in a couple different ways, just depending. And you can give it whatever name you want. I think that's fine for the name, so I'm just going to click on finish. Okay. And then it actually opens up and it's showing you, for that customer, what items they had. Now, if I wanted to, I could have actually displayed customer information in here as well. Okay, so there's a lot of bells and whistles in this front end that you can do that you really can't do over in the back end. But it's actually super easy to connect them, as you could see. So I'm going to save this, and then we can close it. So once you've got the connection made, you can enter data over in using your SQL commands in SQL Server, or you can enter data over here.